Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, my little biscuit.
Hey, Puddin'.
All right, let's talk about the television shows of 1971 from TV Guide. First off, let's discuss what life was like in 1971. For example, the cost of living. How much was the average home back then?
$25,000.
How much was the average comic book?
15 cents.
How about a movie ticket?
$1.50.
Who were the WWF champions at that time?
Ivan Koloff defeated long-standing champion Bruno Sammartino on January 18th. Pedro Morales then won the belt from Ivan Koloff on February 8th.
And who won the Hugo Award for the best novel?
Larry Niven for Ringworld.
A lot of good stuff going on there. In fact, there were some notable events in 1971 in the world of television. How about starting the year off, January 1st?
The final cigarette advertisements are televised in the United States, with the final one occurring during that evening's broadcast of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson on NBC.
And on January 12th, CBS airs the first episode of All in the Family, with a disclaimer at the beginning of the program warning viewers about the potentially offensive content. Within a year, it became television's most popular program, and it started a trend towards realism in situation comedies.
March the 2nd, on an All in the Family episode, Archie and Edith get brand new next-door neighbors, Michael and Gloria's best friend Lionel Jefferson, played by Mike Evans and his parents. The episode marks Isabel Sanford's first appearance as Louise Jefferson.
And on August 1st, the much-acclaimed 6-hour BBC miniseries The Six Wives of Henry VIII, starring Keith Mitchell as Henry, makes its U.S. premiere. CBS would air it over 6 consecutive Sundays through September 5th.
Oh, we need to watch that, huh?
Yeah. In fact, there were quite a few debuts in 1971.
January 10th, Masterpiece Theater on PBS.
April 2nd, the return of Ultraman in Japan.
September 11th, Sabrina the Teenage Witch on CBS Saturday morning.
The Jackson 5 on ABC Saturday morning.
October 25th, The Electric Company, a skit-based children's program aimed at teaching reading skills on PBS.
So let's open up this TV guide. Cover date July 10 through 16. That is, it covers the programs for that week. And it has the Cookie Monster on the cover. It's entitled Sesame Street. How well has it worked? What have they learned? What's next? Were you a Sesame Street fan growing up?
I watched it. Now, it wasn't really one of my favorite shows, but yes, I did watch it.
So you were part of the, as a fairly recent poll, 95% of Americans that said they grew up watching Sesame Street. And it is a bona fide American institution. There are very few shows that 95% of Americans have watched. I mean, think about it. Do you know of anybody that doesn't know who Oscar the Grouch is or Big Bird?
No, and the thing is, people even use those references. Calling someone a grouch like Oscar, and certainly Cookie Monster is...
You're the Cookie Monster in this household. That is true.
Yes, it's certainly a term that people use.
My favorite reference towards Sesame Street is Dave Chappelle's commentary on why Sesame Street characters are the way they are. If any of our listeners have not heard or seen that skit, you have to search it on YouTube. It is absolutely hysterical. But again, Sesame Street has been part of our lives for over 50 years now. It started in 1969. We've discussed it on a previous review of TV Guide issues. But by this point, people are asking, is it a worthwhile show? In fact, what's around the corner for Sesame Street? The producers look ahead, and they take into account what has been happening along the block. This was a really interesting article, even having discussion with Joan Gans Cooney, she was one of the co-creators of the show. Can you imagine just 2 years later, they were getting slack? Some people were saying this is a waste of time, giving kids a head start, not teaching them formally, making a joke out of this using puppets and letters instead of a formal education. Like, what? There were people criticizing Sesame Street back then?
People are always going to criticize TV shows. And actually, the show has gotten slack even in the last few years, too, for other things. Because, you can always find something to complain about. But the thing is, it was a hit show, and a lot of kids loved it. And that's really the reason that people criticize it. They're always going to find something, especially about popular shows. You're always going to find something not to like.
This was interesting. The article starts out by saying that the president of Ohio Wesleyan University asked seniors who they'd like him to invite as commencement speakers this June. They asked for Joan Gans Cooney, originator of Sesame Street. It is fashionable on campuses these days to grump at virtually anything originated by the adult establishment, particularly anything associated with the alleged wasteland of TV or perpetrated by the federal government. It just seems so ominous when you label Sesame Street in that sense.
I thought it was weird reading that article when they said, they're saying, that people don't like adult content. We're talking about Ohio State University. They were all adults there. But I think they meant people older than college age.
Oh, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Nothing has changed. You look at college age kids now and just hate everything in society, right? Everything's terrible. I like this, the wasteland of TV.
And TV itself gets criticized a lot too by these intellectuals, we'll say.
Yeah, interesting. President Nixon felt moved to praise it. There's been debate about this because of the fact that Sesame Street was groundbreaking. Their goal was to give kids a head start because some families did not have the means to be able to teach their kids before kindergarten. So those kids had a disadvantage to those parents who did teach their kids. So Sesame Street was, to a degree, a babysitter in a way, but it was a positive babysitter.
It was designed to teach kids a little bit about reading before they started school, because some kids didn't know as much when they started, and so those kids were at a disadvantage going to school and being around some kids who knew some of the letters and these other kids didn't. So it was a way to help them get a head start, and it was fun for kids. They could learn in a fun way. So that was the purpose of the show, and it's also great that it was on PBS. That it was free. It was paid for with tax money, right?
Exactly, and it was available everywhere. So everybody had a PBS station, an affiliate station in their area. I remember when I was a kid having the antennas on the TV. You had CBS, ABC, NBC, and depending on the weather, it was some shows you couldn't get in that clear. I remember always getting that in.
I always got it too, yeah. PBS or...
Loved PBS programming. Nova, Cosmos. Some of my favorite shows were the ones that were education-based growing up. For young kids, I just can't imagine. This article talks about how some people just thought it was just total trash. And when you look at the idea behind it, these are some of the terms we don't use today, but it said that... the ghetto youngster will get ahead by watching this show.
Well, yeah, this article says that's really what it was designed for, was more for someone had the idea about teaching these ghetto kids or finding a way to reach them through TV.
And another thing, that this was kind of Star Trek-ish in a way. They purposely wanted a diverse cast. I never had Spanish people in my area where I grew up in Connecticut. Probably I could say the first Hispanic person I ever saw was someone on Sesame Street. And that was by design. And they purposely wanted women and minorities in the production crew as well. Holy cow. They really wanted to create a Star Trek universe right there on Sesame Street, in front of the camera and behind the camera.
They did. And you saw these people, walking around on the street and being friendly and talking to the puppets. It was really neat to see that on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Maria, I remember her.
Maria,
yeah,
of course, yeah. Gordon, as much as we say that the characters on Sesame Street, the puppets, were iconic, I really cared about the cast there. Mr. Hooper?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, everyone loved these. I mean, that was one of the things that they worked into. How ingenious the writing skills were for this team. In that, in real world, Mr. Hooper died, and they worked in his death how to cope with death on an episode.
Oh, that's a good thought. This TV Guide article says that that the show didn't really teach as much about real life. It didn't teach as much about the pain of real life, but that must have changed later. It was,
you got to
probably
figure
all,
this show was only 2 years old at the time.
Yes.
Of this article, but within time they were able to broaden the scope and really make it an integral part of the life experience for kids at a very young age, and I think that's important.
But you know, the people, we'll say the real people on the show were the ones that were always the nice characters, and then you had the puppets. Mm-hmm. The puppets are the ones that really had the very distinct personalities.
Absolutely. Like
the Grouch or the Cookie Monster, and even like Big Bird, I think, was the more innocent one.
Mm-hmm.
So that, yeah, it's neat how they made the puppets that way. And we saw some of the puppets at the Atlanta Museum.
Oh, Atlanta Center for
Puppetry Arts. Yes.
That is worth the trip going to. I mean, we spent way more time. I thought it would be an in and out type deal, that within an hour you can spend time reading everything, looking at the detail of the actual puppets, seeing the progress of the puppets and of puppetry, the history behind it. Absolutely wonderful. I do think it's amazing that this is something that has endured for so long, and it's funny how it had affected my brother and I. One of the earliest things that we ever got, so I had to be in like preschool or kindergarten, was we had pillowcases of Sesame Street. So it had like Bert and Ernie, Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, all the famous characters, Cookie Monster. So when you flip them over, it would be one picture on one side, the other picture on the other side. And at a young age, I really loved Oscar the Grouch, and my brother loved Cookie Monster. Do you know that going forward, my mother, when she had to buy us things, she would always get something green for me and blue for my brother. And it all started there.
Oh, that's neat.
So we'd know the difference between our things. If a pencil box, she gets a Trapper Keeper, I always got a green one.
Yeah,
my brother always got a blue one.
Just the color, but it represented those puppets.
But it all started right there. When we used to play family board games. When we played Sorry, always green. My brother, always blue. And when we got a little bit older, first, second, third grade, we were more into superheroes. I always got Hulk stuff. He always got Spider-Man stuff. And a lot of Spider-Man things were labeled blue. You'd think red, but it wasn't. It was blue. Funny as it is. You look at the Spider-Man underoos, they're actually blue instead of red. Anyway, side story, that it all started, these color combinations that identified us as kids, started with Sesame Street.
So that's cool. Yeah, it's something like that you got from a child that just sort of just carried on later.
Oh, the impact of Sesame Street can't be understated. There's even got to meet Carol Spiney at DragonCon some years ago. There's a fantastic documentary about him, his life as Big Bird, and what he did, other characters that he worked on Sesame Street. But he's most known for Big Bird, but it's on YouTube. Amazing story. This is the funny thing about reading old TV guides. You're able to see things for what it was at a certain time period, and you realize that we look at things differently now than they looked at it then. I think if you ask anybody, is there anything negative about Sesame Street? I can't imagine saying there is anything negative, because it's even gotten better. They've included more people of different backgrounds. Sesame Street is known for teaching some Spanish, which is so useful, and also working in handicapped characters, handicapped physically or some kind of developmental issues. That's the real world. We work with and live around different people, and Sesame Street taught that working with each other is a good thing. To start that at such a young age is incredibly important.
It had a lot of these messages for kids that you might not even think about, that you wouldn't have thought about back then. And so we won't mention there have been more criticisms, but But all in all, it really is a good show. With the best of intentions, but also it was all handled well, and it all came off very well, I think.
Absolutely.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me. Perfect harmony, perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a cloak and keep it company. And the real I like to teach the world to sing. In perfect harmony, perfectly. And I'd like to buy the world a coat and keep it company. It's the real thing.
So let's open up TV Guide for the week of July 10th through 16th, and we're going to go day by day. So let's talk about our favorite shows. And in fact, if I was living next door to you, if I bring over a box of cereal over your house, can we watch Saturday morning cartoons together?
Sure, I'd love to.
All right, here's the choices. These are cereals that were introduced in 1971. You pick which one you'd like, and I'll bring it over. Buckwheat's cereal, Corn Total, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Norman, which is a really weird name for a cereal, Sweet Wheats, and Vanilla Crunch, which was a flavored Captain Crunch. Out of those, which ones do you want me to bring over?
A lot of those I never heard of, but I'll say the Vanilla Crunch. Out of it's probably the closest to what I used to like as a kid.
All right, Captain Crunch's Vanilla Crunch. All right, 7:30 in the morning. Dusty's Treehouse, Heckle and Jekyll, Yogi and Friends. What would you want to watch?
Yogi and Friends.
I really like Dusty's Treehouse. I used to watch that a lot as a kid.
Did I say it wrong? What?
No,
Dusty or Yogi? What?
You said Yogi.
Yeah, what was it? It was Dusty?
I said I like... Oh my God, it's a different show. Can I watch Dusty's Treehouse?
I never even heard of it. No, we're watching Yogi.
Oh boy. You as a little girl, and just like you are as my wife, well, you take control of the TV. All right. 8 o'clock, Bugs Bunny Roadrunner, Lancelot Link and Secret Chimp, Woody Woodpecker. What would you want to watch?
Roadrunner.
All right, I could deal with that. Gumby is on at 8:30.
I never did watch that.
Unreal. I love the Art Clokey Productions. At 9 o'clock, Dr. Dolittle, Josie and the Pussycats at 10 o'clock, or H&R Puffin Stuff.
Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh, they have Lucha Libre on as well. Mexican wrestling?
No.
I like Josie and the Pussycats too. All right, 10:30. Harlem Globetrotters, Skyhawks. Which of those two would you want to watch?
Harlem Globetrotters?
Yep.
They were
like
really
that.
popular back
Yeah,
then.
they sure were. I remember wanting that rainbow basketball so bad. Because that was like the ABA basketball.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, 11 o'clock. Archie. Baseball, Boston Red Sox beat the Yankees in New York. Woo! Rivalry there. Which one?
Archie.
Of course. Hardy Boys at 11:30. That's the cartoon.
There was a cartoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at 12 o'clock, Scooby-Doo or American Bandstand. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles play Tears of a Clown.
Maybe American Bandstand, but I don't know as much that I would want to see Smokey Robinson.
All right. Sesame Street was on as well. Now, it's interesting to note that during this time period, they would list the Sesame Street episodes by episode number. And this is episode number 156. And they also sing the alphabet song. The Monkees cartoon is at 12:30. Also repeats movies, The Three Stooges in Orbit, and Abbott and Costello Meet Keystone Cops. I liked all of them as far as the movies go. I used to watch a lot of Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello, especially the Abbott and Costello versus the Universal Monsters. All right, 1:30. Jetsons is on. Did you enjoy the Jetsons?
Loved the Jetsons, yes.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to evening, 5 o'clock, The Avengers. Patrick McNee, the Avengers, not the Marvel Avengers, but the
Spy Show,
Emma
right?
Peel, yeah, of course. Steve, Great show. Three Stooges was also on at that time. 7:30, Mission Impossible, featuring Leonard Nimoy as Paris and Peter Graves as Phelps. Absolutely love Mission Impossible. Thought that was an incredible show. 8:30, My Three Sons.
I used to love that show.
10:30 at night, Hugh Hefner Variety Show. That's crazy. I never even knew he had a variety show.
Oh, that just sounds too weird. We probably should see if that's on YouTube. No, we gotta.
Hey everybody, this is Mark McCrae, and I'm the author of The Best Saturdays of Our Lives. When I want to hear a really cool discussion about my favorite cartoons, I listen to StarPodTrek.
Moving into Sunday morning, now you got to remember at this time, Saturdays and Sundays were considered cartoon days. It wasn't just limited to Saturdays. So you're seeing quite a few cartoons rolling in on Sunday morning. 7 o'clock, Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, great cartoon.
7:30, Yogi Bear.
Another one. Well, they still had all the church shows Sunday morning too, right?
A ton of them. You're not kidding. 11 o'clock, Bullwinkle. 12:30, Davy and Goliath. Another Art Clokey production. 2 o'clock, Outer Limits. A group of scientists create a fake being from another planet to frighten nations into peaceful coexistence. 3 o'clock, Johnny Quest. 3:30, Mr. Rogers. On display are birds' eggs.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers was my show.
Evening, 4:30, Twilight Zone. From the roof of her lonely shack, a woman spots a tiny spaceship. Script by Richard Matheson. Ooh, the Angus Moorhead episode. That was a good one. Remember, there was no speaking.
I remember that one. So back then, you could watch Outer Limits and Twilight Zone in the same day.
Yeah, I mean, this was the height of repeats by the 70s.
It was, yeah.
How many times we said if there weren't the repeats of Star Trek and Twilight Zone and all this stuff, we wouldn't be as nerdy as we are now.
Because they were on so much back then.
Mm-hmm. Speed Racer at 5:30. Evening time, Brady Bunch. 6 o'clock, Something's Got to Be Done About Cindy. The little tattletale has other Brady kids up in arms, and Alice minus a boyfriend. 7 o'clock, The Partridge Family.
There you go. Yes.
You loved David Cassidy, didn't you?
Oh, I did.
How about That Girl at 7:30?
I loved That Girl.
Monday morning, 7 o'clock, Spider-Man, the cartoon.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Dinah Shore at 9 o'clock. Topics, everyday fashions, how to plant a vegetable garden, and how to shop in supermarkets. Do we really need someone to teach us how to shop in supermarkets?
It's like that's the only thing that they could think of to talk about back then.
Yeah, I guess so. The Lucille Ball Show. Now Jeopardy returned at this time. We know it took a little sabbatical, but it's back on at 11 o'clock. 3 o'clock, reruns of Gomer Pyle USMC.
Gomer Pyle was great. That was one of my favorite shows.
Oh, me too. I loved it. Mr. Ed at 4 o'clock. 4:30, Father Knows Best. Were you a Father Knows Best fan?
Oh, yes. That show had two people from Star Trek, remember?
That's right. Okay, so here, this is the calamity during that time. You had to choose between Father Knows Best, The Munsters, or That Girl.
Oh, yeah, that would be hard, yeah.
I would choose out of those The Munsters.
I would probably say That Girl.
5 o'clock, My Favorite Martian. 5:30, Gilligan's Island.
Well, of course, Gilligan's Island. That was great.
Yeah, it was. That was one of my top shows. 6 o'clock, Star Trek. McCoy falls in love with the priestess of a planet doomed to destruction.
The green priestess of the cosmic computer, as David Gerald said. Yes. For the world is hollow and I have touched the sky. One of the longest...
have touched this guy?
One of the longest episode titles of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, 1935 Universal Classic at 7 o'clock. Werewolf of London. Also at 7, I Love Lucy. In sunny Italy, Lucy feels bad about being so far away from little Ricky on his birthday.
I Love Lucy was a great show. Yeah.
I think that's another show I've seen every single episode of. Numerous times. You want to talk about a show being in repeats constantly? I Love Lucy had to be up there. Like at multiple times it was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I watched it all the time, yes.
All right, there's an ad in the middle of this section for encyclopedias, Encyclopedia Britannica. And I remember having the encyclopedia set at my grandfather's house, and then we built our own set in our house. That was a big thing. Every house had a set of encyclopedias. You get like one a month.
Yeah, I didn't have Encyclopedia Britannica, but I had a set of encyclopedias.
That was like, if you didn't have a set of encyclopedias, you were doomed. You couldn't do your homework half the time.
I definitely used them for
Oh,
reports
me too.
and
Absolutely,
stuff. Yes.
Yeah, that was our internet before the internet. That and Starlog magazine. Lucille Ball show was at 8:30. Mayberry RFD was at 9 o'clock.
Not as good as the Andy Griffith Show.
Not near as good. And the Lucille Ball show was not as good as I Love Lucy. I think it was a hard transition, those shows that were popular in the 60s and to roll into the 70s. When they got that refresh or that update, it just didn't have the same feel.
Well, they also retooled them. Well, the thing about Mayberry RFD, it wasn't funny anymore. I don't think they didn't really try to make it a comedy as much.
You needed that combination. Don Knotts and Andy Griffith.
Yeah.
Same thing with I Love Lucy. You needed those four people. Like, it really did. It wasn't about one person. It was about a group of people. If you don't have that chemistry, it's not awesome.
Taking away the original dynamic of the people and having it in a different type of setting.
11 o'clock, Beat the Clock game. I remember having the Beat the Clock game. I wouldn't say it's a board game. It was a party game. And we played that a lot as kids. Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock, Spider-Man. 8 o'clock, Captain Kangaroo.
Captain Kangaroo. I remember watching that show a lot, too. It seems like wasn't it on in the afternoon?
I'm sure it was on different time periods, probably in different locations.
Okay, yeah, it just seems like I remembered it in the afternoon. And yeah, and Mr. Green Jeans, he was so cool.
How about Dennis the Menace at 8:30?
No, I didn't watch that.
Gee, Mr. Wilson. My mother would say, he's an annoying kid. What old man would want to hang around with a little boy? Jack LaLanne at 9 o'clock. Remember he was a big deal back then?
He was. I didn't really see him back then. I only remember him on other shows that talked about him.
9:30, Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, that was one of my shows, too.
Absolutely, I loved it. I had such a crush on Ellie Mae.
She was beautiful.
Remember her in The Twilight Zone?
Yeah, definitely.
6 o'clock, evening. Star Trek. Kirk's investigation of an energy force takes him to an uncharted planet.
The alternative factor.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these descriptions, though, are very vague, aren't they?
That is. I like it how we know the episode titles, but they don't list the episode titles here. 7 o'clock, movie. Another Universal classic. Son of Frankenstein. This is how I watched the classic horror movies, was on repeats. Like, if it was something like this, I was like, oh man, I gotta watch this. Because I'd see them talked about in Famous Monsters of Filmland, but we didn't have VCRs back then. You just had to wait. You had to wait till it was on repeats television.
I mean, I would spend a lot of time with the TV guide and be ready to watch certain things I wanted to watch.
9:30, All in the Family. Archie's bigotry and one white lie act as catalysts for a memorable evening in which the Bunkers are invited to dinner with their black neighbors. This is a show, when I was young, I didn't truly understand it. I know that everybody else in the family couldn't stop laughing over it, and I laughed just because of certain things that came up. And I knew some of the things were funny. I did not understand how ingenious the writing of the show was until I got much older. And you're like, holy cow, this is an amazing show. It would never be produced today. People's minds would blow up.
I mean, I saw it when I was a child, and you're right, like, I didn't really get a lot of the stuff back then.
I remember my mother saying, oh, Archie's just like my father. And I realized, oh my God, my grandfather was such an extreme bigot. But this show made you look at bigotry in such a strange, comical way. It's interesting that this TV guide has an interview with Sally Struthers in the back as well. And growing up in the Northeast in Connecticut, it was very, I'd say, people, because there's so many immigrants up there, you lived kind of sort of in the neighborhood of your root ethnicity. So we lived in a primarily Italian neighborhood. I remember there being Polish neighborhoods. You know, I mean, things are just divided up, but where the immigrants stayed, they brought their people into the neighborhoods with them. And this article with Sally Struthers, she says that now she's the expert on Polish jokes because of this show. Because you remember that was one of the things that Archie would do, is just say all these Polish jokes to Mike constantly, and it would just drive Mike crazy.
It's amazing that they could do stuff like that back then.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. People just absolutely lose their mind. Well, not everybody, but certain segment of the population would lose their minds if this show or something like it was on now. But I mean, it was so different than anything else on television. And when they say that this started the wave of realism in television shows, they're not kidding. You know, All in the Family is the first television show to ever hear a toilet flush on.
Oh, really?
Crazy to think about it. Like, yeah, that was considered a taboo thing to even suggest there's a toilet in a house.
Well, I mean, yeah, TV used to be very different. You know how they always say about how Lucy and Ricky didn't sleep in the same bed and things like that. Yeah. Yeah,
that's right. I think the next step into absolute outrageousness when it came to sitcoms would be Married with Children.
Yeah, a later show, but they were really young.
That would be the next one after. Yes. Yeah, but think about it, that's way after that. But All in the Family, our family loved this show. And that's one of the things I think people from the Northeast appreciate it more, because that's kind of like the neighborhood that we lived in. If you look at the front of Archie's house, there's like no real front space there. You're on the sidewalk and you just walk right up to the house, and it's multiple levels and or multiple families. I mean, because space is limited in the Northeast. That's just a common thing. Yeah, that was an entirely relatable show on so many levels.
Next on Channel 11, Star Trek.
Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock, Star Trek. Mortals battle an immortal when the spaceship Enterprise is seized by the Greek god Apollo.
Who mourns for Adonai?
That's right. 7 o'clock, What's My Line? Panelists include Alan Alda, Arlene Francis, and Soupy Sales. Soupy Sales was considered like an unbelievable comedian at that time. Like with stuff like throwing a pie in his face and stuff. Advertisement, Star Trek, weeknights, 6 o'clock, Color, KCOP 13. 8 o'clock, Lucha Libre. I never saw Mexican wrestling on TV before. 10 o'clock, Hawaii Five-0. Were you a Hawaii Five-0 fan?
I used to watch it with my parents. I was just really young back then, so I don't remember any of it.
I remember the theme song so much. I love the theme song.
Of course that, yes.
1 o'clock in the morning, The Incredible Shrinking Man by Richard Matheson. Wow, 2 Richard Matheson movies within a week.
Well, he did a lot of stuff back then.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think about Incredible Shrinking Man?
Awesome movie.
Thursday evening, Tom Snyder Show. I enjoyed the Tom Snyder Show. I think some of his interviews are some of the best. Also at 6 o'clock, Star Trek. Kirk and his crew encounter a fantasy land during their shore leave on a distant planet.
That was shore leave. At least it's in the description.
Exactly. Now here's something that I've been saying, is that I know in my area, I watch Star Trek on Channel 11, 11 Alive. They definitely played things out of order. And when we're looking at this week, we're seeing they're jumping around a lot. Because it would take me time to see all the episodes. There'd be some like, nope, never saw this, never saw this. I'd see a list of Star Trek episodes. I was like, how do I miss this? This is why. You couldn't plan ahead.
It looks like they were just picking random episodes or something.
Exactly.
But I think when I watched it, I think they were always in order. Back when I used to have a list of the order and could tell.
Yes. 8:30, Bewitched.
Bewitched was one of my favorite shows. You know, I do remember reading that at this time, you know, when All in the Family started, it kind of made Bewitched look a little less important and it's one of the reasons it got canceled. I mean, it had the audience went down.
Are you talking about like the style of previous shows?
Yeah, the style.
It wasn't just particularly Bewitched.
Yeah, it might have been other shows too. It was just because I saw this on a show that was about Bewitched.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they were saying, yeah, I mean, at a time, it just seemed less relevant when now you've got all these shows that are more.
Well, you got to figure when All in the Family started, then the copycat started, and then the spin-off started.
Yes.
So they were just, okay, All in the Family's a hit. What else could we do? Let's spin off the Jeffersons. Wait a second, Jeffersons are a hit. Let's do something else. Sanford and Son. Like, it blew up the style of television. This 1971 is the pivotal point of when sitcoms drastically changed.
Yeah, these comedies that started being less family shows and more of that type of show.
Exactly. I mean, it had a little bit more realism. They started talking about issues that these shows previously would never speak about. Andy Griffith Show, Beverly Hillbillies Show. Exactly. Now we're seeing more and more shows from this time period going forward were not in rural areas. They were inner city or just outside the inner city areas.
Shows that took place in those areas.
Exactly. 10:30, This Is Your Life. Johnny Cash's life and career, recalled by his wife June Carter. The Reverend Billy Graham and country singer Jimmy Dean. I would have watched that. Also, movie, mystery, Sherlock Holmes and the Deadly Necklace. Friday evening, 6 o'clock, Star Trek. Kirk jeopardizes the lives of his men when he intervenes in a society where life is valued below combat and personal integrity.
I know that's either A Private Little War or Friday's Child.
It's definitely Friday's Child, because it has Julie Newmar in it. And that's
you
one of the
need
things,
to read the whole thing.
No, I want to hear it's like, this description is a horrible description. Like, it's so vague. Yeah, all I had to say was Julie Newmar, and you would know what episode that is. Another Batman Star Trek connection right there. 7:30, The Brady Bunch. Alice's September Song. Now, here's the crazy thing, is that this gives the title of a Brady Bunch episode, which I don't ever remember having episode titles, but they don't give the episode title for Star Trek.
They never have in TV Guide.
No, but why would they do it for Brady Bunch?
Well, maybe it is because when you watch the episode, the Brady Bunch doesn't give the name of the episode, but for Star Trek it does. So it's like they don't have to put it in TV Guide because you can watch it and see the episode title.
9:30, Odd Couple. I absolutely love The Odd Couple.
I never did watch it.
Again, that's a show I think primarily if you lived in the Northeast, you appreciate it more. Certain shows are regional like that, like The Honeymooners. I know nobody else throughout the United States loves The Honeymooners as much as Northeasterners.
Oh, is that like in the South they like the Dukes of Hazzard? That's what you mean? Regional?
You know, I'd say to a degree, but growing up in Connecticut, every kid loved the Dukes of Hazzard. I think that like broke barriers.
Okay.
Well, maybe like Hee Haw. I think Hee Haw is a regional thing.
Okay, yeah,
right?
I can see that.
I'd say mostly Midwest and the South liked Hee Haw. But Dukes of Hazzard, enormous popularity. My cousin was obsessed with the Dukes. Friday evening, 11:55 at night, Phantom of the Rue Morgue. Well, we talked about some great shows. In fact, in 1971, there were still quite a few shows that we didn't talk about that were still airing that we enjoyed, including Candid Camera, Doctor Who, The Benny Hill Show, The Carol Burnett Show, Mike Douglas, but unfortunately, we did lose some shows.
That Girl, Dark Shadows, Johnny Cash Show, Ed Sullivan, UFO, Beverly Hillbillies, Hogan's Heroes, Green Acres, Mayberry RFD.
Now, isn't that interesting? We were just saying that because of All in the Family, it changed the dynamic of the setting for shows. And if we look at the shows that got canceled during this time period, a lot of them were rural-based shows. It was a total twist on what the American population wanted to see.
Well, some of these shows had been on a while too, so they ran their course. But yeah, it's definitely like these. The more family-oriented shows are ending, and now we're getting into the more modern shows of the 70s.
Yeah. Interesting time period, interesting transition. Yeah, awesome year for television.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.